and expenditures were under by $12,000. There was the spring season was rainy at the golf course, and that did affect play at the course. The ambulance fund, and this was another significant amount higher than what we projected. That ending balance is about 161,000 higher than we projected due to the increased number of ambulance runs. In that case, the revenues, actually, ambulance revenues were over by 222,000, and expenditures actually came in over budget by 61,000. And of that 61,000, that includes the increased transfer to the general fund for the overtime. The health insurance fund, that balance is 154,000 higher than what we projected. This is halfway through our health insurance fund is on a calendar year basis, and so that can change, between July through December. But it is 154,000 higher than what we projected. The claims administrative fees were 152,000 less than what we'd estimated. The transfer for the wellness program was 11,500 less, and revenues were about 9,700 less than estimated. In the employee benefits fund, that balance is 59,000 higher than what we projected, and that's because the employee benefit costs were less, and it was less because of vacancies or changes in coverage for the city's employees. The local option sales tax fund is less than what we projected by 258,000, and that's all due to increased transfers for sewer and street costs, and it's difficult to project just where those projects would be at June 30th, but they were a little farther ahead than what we had originally projected. The road use tax fund is over our estimate by 234,000. Road use tax revenues came in 66,000 higher than what we'd estimated, but funding transfers were 167,000 less than what we had originally estimated. And then going down towards the bottom, the public housing, Clark House and Sunset Park, that ending balance is 100,000 higher than what we estimated. But of that amount, about 50,000 of it was requested to be carried forward to this next fiscal year and has already been spent. Revenues in public housing were also over our estimate by 7,200. And then the last one is the Section 8 housing voucher program. And the federal funding came in higher by 42,500, and expenditures were actually 3,100 higher than our original revised estimate. But again, that is favorable balances in both the housing funds. So kind of in summary, the last slide here, again, the general fund looks very good at the end of the year. The unreserved balance actually increased by $328,000 compared to the ending balance for last fiscal year. When we do budget, we look at the percent that the ending balance is of the operating expenditures. And at the end of FY11, we increased that percent to 13.6%. The city's financial policies provide for a minimum of 10%. A year ago, we had 11.7, and so at the end of this year, with the favorable general fund revenues and expenditures, we did increase that to 13.6. And in part, that was moves us to the correct direction to address Moody's bond rating comments that said our 10% was relatively narrow, and they would encourage us to have a little higher amount. And the last 2 years, that has moved up. There were positive balances in all the funds except for the landfill, transfer station, and boat harbor, and deficits were projected in each of those funds at the time we did budget. But most other funds have ending balances close to or higher than what we projected, and are in a very good position going into this next budget meeting and sessions. So this is a kind of an overview. That book I handed out last week had more individual department detail in it. If there's any questions you have on anything in the book or the overview, I'd be happy to answer them now or later in my office.
Council, do you have any questions or comments? Anyone?
It's like
good job.
Year.
Good year, yes.
Thank you, Nancy. Very good job.
Yeah, good work on everybody's part and all the departments that are coming in balances. And those that we projected the deficit in are there, but everyone else has worked for that 13.6, was it?
Yes,
yeah.
Definitely. Yes.
Yeah, that's worked together for that end. Good job, Nancy.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Nance. All right. Next item on tonight's agenda is a National Citizen Survey discussion. Greg?
Thank you, Your Honor. Catching up here. We began this discussion last Saturday during our goal setting session as related to goals for next fiscal year. So some of this will be repeat discussion that we had. I thought I'd start out with with a couple quick numbers and then run through some of the information I had, and then open it up for discussion. Hopefully we can have a good discussion like we did on Saturday, or at least revisit that discussion as well. So, as you're aware, you've all had copies of the National Citizen Survey. Had time to digest that information. There's been a few articles in the paper. Staff has had time to digest and review it as well. We've had some good discussions. Met with the editorial board last week, I believe it was, as well. Had comments and various discussions with community members and folks around town as well. I thought I'd highlight a couple of them here real quick tonight. And some of the issues, these are some of the items that I think that kind of stand out where we have questions. How do we address perceptions? How do we address these issues going forward? Overall quality of life in Muscatine, 57%. Yet, would you recommend living in Muscatine to someone who asked? 68%. Remain in Muscatine for 5 years, 84%. Doesn't really jive or match with that first 57% number. I'm going to jump to community design and transportation. Availability of paths and walking trails was at 60%. And I was on our new trail 2 weeks ago on a Sunday afternoon, and it was packed with walkers, joggers, strollers, and bikes, including a couple of our own. We've got a great trail system in and around the community, so that's a perception that we need to take a look at here as well. Street repair, 20%. We've had an ongoing program utilizing local options. Sales tax, we've had the combined sewer overflow program where we do sidewalk repairs and street repairs. We have, and part of our discussions mentioned Colorado and Cedar Street, two of our major streets, and maybe some of this perception is coming from those two streets, which are, with Cedar underway and Colorado coming in the near future. Maybe that's where some of these perceptions are coming from. Another item under recreation and wellness, recreation opportunities, 34%, yet 75% of used Muscatine recreation centers. 93% have visited a neighborhood or city park. Opportunities to attend cultural activities, 23%. And this is a discussion we had Saturday. Compared to other communities our size, I'd clearly argue that I think we've got more cultural opportunities than most communities. We've got the art centers, we've got the library, we've got the symphony, we've got ballet on the riverfront, and on and on throughout the community. So, again, how do we address these issues or perceptions is the discussion. Public trust is really one that I want to focus on over the next year as well. Value of services for taxes paid, overall direction the city of Muscatine is taking, overall image or reputation of Muscatine, 31%, 32%, 35%. However, on the next page, public trust, city employee knowledge, 72%, very good. City employee responsiveness, 67%. City employee courtesy, 70%. City employee overall impression, 65%. Some of these numbers don't, we need to dive deeper into. We need to have more of these discussions to see, what the issues are, where they're centered. Those are just some of the highlights. There's a ton of numbers in here, a lot of good information that I encourage everyone to digest. But some of our conversation that I thought I'd highlight. Who responded? 38% were not employed. Does that have an impact impact on their perceptions and how they responded. 64% have been here for 20 plus years, 79%, 11 to 20 years. Does that have a, impact their perception as they respond to the survey? So who responded? This is kind of a summary of some of the discussions we've had Saturday with the editorial board, with staff. These are just some of the highlights. We've got a significant disconnected population. When we did the recycling bins, the number of folks that got a blue bin and called wanting to know why this blue bin was in front of their house, with the amount of publicity that received and the information on the web and in the newspapers and everywhere, we've certainly got a percentage of the population that's disconnected. So how do we address those folks? There were some comments made that there's always been this negative view in town that's deeply ingrained. Is there a lack of community pride? We're often called a best kept secret. A disenfranchised population. How do we address those folks if that's the case? And that's an issue that's come up here recently. Is that true? How do we address those folks? Economic development. Everybody wants. I got a list from students. I believe the mayor and some council members did as well. A while back, of all of the stores that they like, and most of them were, at the mall in Iowa City, Coral Ridge Mall. Well, or Olive Garden or Red Lobster. Well, they've got a $50,000 minimum for Red Lobster and Olive Garden. They had a small market concept. It didn't work. Likelihood of them coming in the near future, not good. But what can we do to address, retail in Muscatine and industrial issues in Muscatine? So this discussion we've had is, focusing on economic gardening, focusing on the chamber's economic development strategic plan. We had what was it, about 6 months ago, we had a chamber meeting in Buxton, came and focused on retail and the services that they can provide to help identify retail that would be ideally suited for Muscatine. Is that something we wanted to pursue? There's a price tag to that. It was a $50,000 study. Is that how we want to pursue retail in Muscatine? Marketing. A lot of our discussion has been focused on marketing. What do we need to do? We've got the website now. We need to get folks out and about in the community. We need to educate folks about what government does, what the city of Muscatine does. Do they really understand what we do? That means, getting out, going to Rotary, doing presentations like the one that Matt Chandler did on the sewer system. That's meetings, that's public engagement, that's the newspaper, that's maybe a coffee hour, different issues, Bob's, your meeting, your neighborhood meetings at Hardee's, a great example of public engagement. The college, I learned a little while back of a new program they have, LL65. It's a marketing service that the community college students are providing. Maybe we work with them to see what they can come up with. So engaging the public, getting out, marketing, talking about economic development strategies like economic gardening, and the strategies that I didn't bring it with me, but the recent Chamber Economic Development Strategic Plan. Focusing on quality of life issues, what we have to offer for families. We have great schools. We've got all of these wonderful amenities. What is it that folks want? What is it that's missing if that's their perception? You know, focusing on the downtown as well. The report mentioned 3 key areas that we can work on to make a big impact